Hello, and welcome to Tech Forum Online. My name is Monique Mongeon. I'm a product manager for sales data and library data here at BookNet Canada. If you're not familiar with us, sales data is a reporting tool that allows retailers, publishers, libraries, and other members of the book industry to access sales and inventory data from retailers across the country. For more information, you can find us at booknetcanada.ca. For those of you who are already familiar with sales data, our power users, welcome back. We'll be going through an update on what the past year has held for sales data and what we're planning for the future. We'll start with a short year in review. I'm recording this just before the end of the year, but so far our subscribers have run 263,828 reports on the sales data site. That's over 1,076 reports per business day so far this year. And using sales data's report automation features, users receive at least 1,146 reports each week. This saves our subscribers collectively 28.5 hours, which averages out across the year to about 1,489 hours, or 42.5 weeks of full-time work saved for the industry through automated reporting. Sometimes time can be difficult to grasp. Another measure of this would be at least enough time to watch 29,750 TikToks. So enough time to learn a new dance or two, a sweet cooking hack, or maybe find a new book or two for your to-read pile. Or if you're not doing all of those things, at least that much time to keep engaging in the business of selling, publishing, circulating, or connecting readers to books. And where is all the data powering these reports coming from? Our retailer panel has grown over the 200 mark this year to 204 retailers, with over 1,500 store locations across the country. We've added 14 new stores to the reporting panel since last year. Shout out to our gutsy book-selling friends who have been resourceful and creative during this challenging time, and especially the brave booksellers who are opening new stores in the middle of a pandemic. If you want to hear from some of those retailers, we have a great panel on our YouTube channel all about the trials and tribulations of opening a new store in the midst of a global pandemic. And we also have a blog series from existing and veteran retailers talking about the ways that they helped keep their stores open and got creative with their businesses over the course of the pandemic. Those are both really great resources, and I encourage you to check them out on our YouTube channel and our blog. To support reporting from our retailer partners, we have integrations built for 8 POS systems, and our data processing supports many others not listed here. Our currently supported integrated POS systems are Book Manager, WordStock, Vigi 3000, Nebraska, Shopify, Square, Lightspeed, and Raytex. If you're not using one of these POS types, you have nothing to fear. We can probably still take reports from your store. Just drop us a line at salesdata@booknetcanada.ca to get started. In addition to the POS platforms I shared on the last slide, we're looking for retailers using the WooCommerce POS to pilot an integration with us, particularly those using the inventory management features in WooCommerce. If that's you, we want to hear from you. Please reach out to us at salesdata@booknetcanada.ca. And while our developers have been hard at work on projects you can learn about over in my colleague Carol's presentation on what's new in Catalyst, the team here at SalesData has been doing a ton of research using all the data provided by our retailer partners. I wanted to start by talking about puzzles, something lots of people have gotten into more over the last 2 years than ever. We know that bookstores rarely just sell books. In our State of Independent Bookselling study, we learned that 87% of Canadian independent bookstores sell puzzles. And for these bookstores, puzzle sales account for 2 to 3% of their store's total revenue. So we wanted to do a dig in the SalesData sales on the sales of puzzles. So we're looking at, in this graph, 2020 and 2021 sales of puzzles in two categories. The first category being games and activities puzzles as a BISAC subject, and the second being the juvenile nonfiction games and activities puzzles. So the games and activities puzzles non-juvenile edition, that category increased 46% from 2020 to 2021, while the counterpart in the juvenile nonfiction category actually saw a decrease of sales about 13%. This may not necessarily mean that children's puzzles are not also selling well, but it could be that puzzles, many of which have a very wide age band, may be categorized more often in the games and activities puzzles category as opposed to the juvenile nonfiction category of the same type. Something to consider, but really interesting to see puzzles come back. It reminds me a little bit of the coloring book boom from a few years ago. So something cool to keep an eye on as we continue moving forward. While I was prepping for our recent Emerging Trends webinar, I was looking closely at sales in the body, mind, and spirit category. And one of the subjects in that grouping showed a significant amount of growth, and that was tarot, which is up 49% over sales in that category in 2019. Body, mind, and spirit in general as a category was up 12% year over year. But of all its subcategories, tarot experienced the greatest growth, and a high number of the top 100 body, mind, and spirit items are in the tarot category. So something interesting to watch if you are looking at items in that category and in sort of the wider wellness trend, which covers a few different BISACs, tarot might be something to keep an eye on. Aside from puzzles and tarot, in 2021, we dedicated a lot of time to digging into trend we heard about over and over again at last year's Tech Forum, that backlist was really having a moment. We knew it was true and we had the data to back it up, but we wanted to find out what else we could learn about backlist. So here we're looking at sales for 2021 broken out by the pub date age, the number of years since a book's publication. And in this sales data, we can see that books published between 2 and 5 years ago outpaced sales of all others. 2 to 5-year-old books accounted for 28% of all book sales in 2021, just behind Frontlist at 27%, 1-year-old books at 21%, 6 to 10-year-old books at 13%, and 11-plus-year-old books at 11%. Sometimes it's nice when the numbers line up. But when you break out those backlist sales ages by subject, you see that the backlist trend is actually least prevalent in fiction. This graph shows that frontlist titles outsell every other age band of title in fiction, and titles just 1 year old tend to do better than titles in that 2 to 5 year age bracket or any of the older ones. In fiction, frontlist titles make up 48% of all sales in 2021. 1-year-old titles at 18%, and the other three age bands decline in sales as the books get older. So while in the all subjects, that 2 to 5 year age band does well, in fiction, this is a category that really bucks the trend. Frontlist really is king in fiction. But it is an outlier. When we look at other categories like nonfiction, which we see here, that 2 to 5 year age band really reigns supreme, making up 31% of all nonfiction sales in Canada, just ahead of Frontlist at 28% and 1-year-old titles at 20%. Something interesting about the subject differences here is maybe thinking about whether buzz takes longer to build for a nonfiction title. Is that maybe why that 2 to 5 year band is such a sweet spot? Do nonfiction readers take a little more time to get through their to-read lists? It's hard to say for sure, but we do know, looking at the sales data over a number of years, that 2 to 5 years old is a sweet spot for nonfiction books. The trend we see in nonfiction is similar to what we see in the juvenile title graph here. 2 to 5 year old titles account for 33% of all juvenile sales, followed by front list at 24%, one-year-old titles at 20%, and the older brackets at 14 and 15%. It's worth noting that in children's, we also have the highest performance in the 6 to 10 and 11 plus year old bracket. Book buying for kids can be very nostalgic, especially for gifting. I know I often give books as baby shower gifts that I enjoyed myself as a child, and that may contribute to the higher backlist numbers in this category. I'm assuming there are lots of other juvenile gift givers like myself who are looking for the books that we remember from our own childhoods, which means we're buying books that are a little bit older than that 2 to 5 year band. So it's clear that across many subjects, that 2 to 5 year age band is a real sweet spot for backlist sales. But within that band, is there an even clearer sweet spot? So in this graph, we've divided the sales by all other pub dates, front list, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years old to try to figure that out. In 2021, 2-year-old books made up 9% of all book sales across the country. 3-year-old books were just behind that at 8%, 4-year-old books at 5.5%, and 5-year-old books at 4.4%. It's not just the total number of units sold in each of these age bands that suggests that 2 and 3 years old are the most popular ages for backlist. It's also the count of ISBNs with sales in each of these brackets. When we look at that count of active ISBNs, they tend to land proportionally the same way this sales graph is. So there are more books that are 2 years old active in the marketplace compared to 3, then even fewer are 4 years old, and even fewer than that are 5 years old. It's really interesting to look at how that breaks out. We'd love to hear your thoughts on backlist, and if there are any other hunches you'd like us to research, definitely let us know. But we know from all this information that backlist is having its moment, that it's 2 to 5 year old backlist that's moving the most, and we may have a little bit of insight into why that could be. There has been a lot of attention on the influence of TikTok on the book industry over the last year, particularly how users on the platform have been creating new audiences for books originally published years ago. In light of all the data we just talked about the ideal age for a backlist title, it's really interesting to note that many popular titles on TikTok happen to have been published between 2 and 5 years ago. Very interesting. Something else to note about Book Talk is that subjects that trend on Book Talk tend to span many categories, including some you may not expect to be social media darlings. So we have subjects like romance, which is up 7% in 2021, women fiction, which is up 14%, science fiction up 27%, YA fiction overall is up 35%, fairy tales, folk tales, legends, and mythology is up 49%. And then we get into what I'm calling the oddballs. Organizational behavior is up 71%, and books on post-traumatic stress disorder are up 162% in sales over the previous year. So it's really interesting to look at the influence of Book Talk not only on those backlist sales, but also across a really wide and varied number of categories. And if you're interested in learning more about Book Talk, we have a 2-part series of panels on what publishers need to know about Book Talk, hosted by some really incredible Book Talk personalities. When I'm recording this, the next session is coming up in a couple of weeks on March 29th. And video from part 1 is on our YouTube channel now. So chances are part 2 is either already up or coming soon. So be sure to check that out. And if you're interested in more subject level insights, including a deeper dive into Book Talk's popular subjects, among many other cool subject trends, you may want to check out our Emerging Trends webinar from a couple of weeks ago. You can find it here on BookNet's YouTube channel. We dig into the data to identify the subjects with the greatest year-over-year percent change to see how readers' interests have changed over time. If you're interested in emerging trends from the library world, You should also check out my colleague Hannah's presentation on library data for all the latest insights on subject level changes in circulation data from our library data service. So what's next in the roadmap for sales data? To stay on the topic of research, we have our forthcoming book to screen studies. These are updated analysis on the sales of performances for book to screen adaptations in the sales market. Our previous reports on tie-ins have been very popular and interesting, and I'm sure this edition will be no exception. So stay tuned for those. I know I'm pretty interested to see what we can glean from these really fascinating research projects. We're also working on adding visibility for Dewey numbers into the sales data site. Stay tuned, this is coming in just a couple of weeks. We are also working on a portal that will offer publishers more control over how titles appear in media bestseller lists, including the ability to merge sales of multiple editions of the same title, and the ability to suppress a title from making the list prior to the pub date. If you have questions about bestseller lists, don't hesitate to send them our way. We're also looking at adding the count of ISBNs to the market share and market comp reports. I talked a little bit about counting the number of active ISBNs when we talked about backlist research, and adding that to the UI reports is the next step for us to be able to offer that kind of deep reporting to you. The questions we're asked most, especially when covering subject trends like we discussed earlier, is whether sales growth is due to a growing number of ISBNs being published in a certain genre, or if a single title exploding in popularity has lifted a whole genre on its own. Adding those ISBN counts to these reports will help add this context to your subject and format level reporting and help you have a little more power and a little more insight in your day-to-day. That's not all we have planned. We have a lot more in our roadmap, but a big part of figuring out what comes next comes from your feedback. Like all BookNet products, Sales Data's future development is driven by stakeholder feedback. So if you've got big dreams or big obstacles in your work with data, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you and find out how we can make your work in 2022 and beyond easier and even more data-driven. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or you just want to talk data, you can email me, salesdata@booknetcanada.ca. Hope you've learned something new today, and have a great day.